Great, fantastic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody that is listening to our podcast today. Welcome to DDP Podcasts. My name is Yanga Malotana and I work on the communications team at DDP. And we are so excited to be bringing this project over to you guys, where you've seen how DDP has been involved on our social media pages. Now we get to be in your ear and constantly in your face about all things democracy. Joining us today is my boss, my leader, and also the leader of this fantastic organization that we are part of, Dr. Paul Kariuki. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you who don't know who he is, Dr. Paul Kariuki is the Executive Director of the Democracy Development Program. He holds a PhD in administration from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and he has served in various leadership roles in civil society sector for the last 22 years. Outside of the civic sector, he is also a research fellow with the School of Management, IT and Governance at UKZN, and his research interests are public governance, public participation, citizenship, electronic governance, monitoring and evaluation in the public sector. He has published widely in these areas of interest and also serves as a reviewer of several national and international academic journals. A mouthful of an introduction for such an incredible man. Dr. Paul Kariuki, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Yanga, for having me here today. I'm winning, as always I say, and I'm excited that we are able to present this podcast to our online viewers and others who may be interested in hearing what we do as DDP. And of course, at the same time, to create an opportunity for engagement on the various aspects I'm going to be talking about democracy and related aspects. And therefore, I'm very excited. And thank you again for having me here.
Absolutely fantastic. So for our viewers tuning in today, as you can see from our title, our discussion today is going to be looking at democracy at the age of what some might call democratic apathy, right? And before we get into the intense crux of the discussion and arguments that come out of that, I think let's start with the basics, Dr. K. What is the Democracy Development Program, and how would you describe the work that the program does?
So the Democracy Development Program as an organization was started in 1993, and we've been running for the last, I would say now, 29 years. And we have been graciously funded by Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, which is a German political foundation that has been very instrumental in shaping the democracy and political engagement in our country since pre-independence days. And it has been very much actively engaged with DDP as one of their grantees in this country in prospering the work that they started pre-democracy days. And after democracy in 1994, they have continued to support the various aspects of our work. And basically DDP as an organization, we call ourselves a convener of citizen gatherings of different aspects, different constituencies, be they political parties, be they traditional leaders, be they civil society organizations and networks, be they ordinary citizens in communities. Our work transcends the various constituencies because we are very, very much passionate of the power of an ordinary citizen in influencing political decisions in our country. And we believe as much as possible when we convene these gatherings with different constituencies to discuss or to debate any discourses that are of national importance, we are building that citizen power from whichever constituency it may be to influence those decisions that affect ordinary citizens in communities and on the street. And this is very important for me to lay upfront because why we're struggling with the concept of democracy, and I know we're going to come into that section later, but one of the reasons why society is struggling with the idea of democracy is because there is no real understanding around what it really means and what it does to ordinary citizens on a daily basis. And thirdly, how can citizens make democracy a lived experience so that they can be able to see what it does actually to themselves as people and what it does in contributing to societal well-being as far as consolidating democracy is concerned. So broadly, that's what DDP does. and we're very, very much passionate about mobilizing citizens to participate in different national and societal discourses. And we have various means through which we do this through our different programmings. And we are able to say confidently, investing in the last 29 years in our communities around this country, we can see how far we have come in enabling citizen power, in holding those who are in leadership accountable for their decisions and for their actions.
I love that you have brought up actually how old DDP is, or at least what I would argue how young DDP is, because it's almost as young as our democracy today. And we know that South Africa's democracy is nearly 30 years old, and many would very much argue that it is still young, you know, compared to the fathers of democracy, like your Americas, where, you know, democracy is something that was quote unquote established in the 1700s already. And we know that that is motivated by the history of apartheid, and that is a byproduct of a time in which people did not have that access to be actively participating in democracy wholly. As South Africa attempts to navigate through the challenges within this young democratic society, I think that the question a lot of people have is, how can they trust the process? How can they trust that this little youngling, this duckling that they have over here is going to grow into being a significant swan in the future, right? Because I think that's where a lot of people are sitting right now. It's like there's a bit of a distrust with the system. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I think I would start, first of all, to borrow from our vision as an organization, that we actually are always working towards activating citizenship, where we want to see citizens mobilized to be able to co-create opportunities that can bring hope in situations that look like hopeless. And right now in this country, there's so many situations that makes everybody as a citizen to wonder, is there a better day tomorrow? We have heard a season or a decade of cliches, a better life for all, and these are the things. But the reality contradicts the cliches. And now the challenge for most citizens, irrespective of their societal status, is this thing called democracy a reality? There is a lot of questioning whether actually it is there. Is it a nebulous concept? And if it is not, how do we experience it? How do we make it livable? How do I eat it? How do I walk it? And all those things. And so the work of DDP, of course, being that it stems from this place to say that as citizens, we have a very powerful mandate, constitutional mandate, to intervene and to participate actively in our public affairs. And so the work of DDP is to advocate, our vision actually is to advocate for that active citizenry that not only holds people in power, those people in power to account, but also advocates that citizens themselves must actively participate at whatever levels of societal engagement. Our mission therefore becomes very, very confined and constrained towards that active citizen engagement, because we believe that's a starting point of experiencing democracy, and not now as a concept, but as an experience. Now, given the context you've given now, the importance of every citizen participating in that broad sense of democracy and active citizenship is to ensure that their voices are heard where it matters most. And so the question then is, where is their voice heard and most important needs to be heard? It's from their household, then to their neighborhood, then to the immediate community, then to the broader community, that now moves from now that community level to a municipal level, if you want to put it that way, and then to a provincial level, and then to a national level, and then engage with the rest of the world. COVID-19 has broken the walls of connection. Now we can participate in a platform like this digitally and reach out to people beyond the borders of South Africa. So, but it begins in your household. How do we, for example, at a household level, talk to each other? How do we hold each other accountable at the home? And then in my neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, What are the structures that I, as a citizen, can engage with and make my voice heard? You see, because if I'm not saying anything and I'm not participating in anything, I'm actually contributing to the problem that I see that pesters me all night, makes me not to sleep, because I'm disconnected with my immediate context. If I'm not participating in my family or in my household as a person who needs to be contributing, not financially only, but also with my ideas, with my thoughts, with my vision. If I'm not doing that at my household level, there is a voice that is missing that can redirect my family or my household to a better future. Now take that notion to my neighborhood. If I'm not participating in my ward committee, for example, or a ratepayers association, or a network of environmental advocates within whatever the network may be, if I'm not participating in any of those opportunities, my voice is not being heard as a citizen, and therefore I'm contributing to the decay that is making me unhappy and feel hopeless for the nation. And then that goes on and on. If I'm not participating at a municipal level through the various channels that have been legislated, some are invented, some are created by citizens themselves. If I'm not participating in those, I'm also I'm being part of the problem. And then you take it to the province and to the nation. So the idea of moving out of hopelessness, societal hopelessness, can be cured when every individual citizen believes that they have something to contribute and their voice matters. Now, I know somebody out there may say, hey, Paul, I've been on that road before. And whenever I try to engage, nobody wants to listen to me. My answer has always been keep talking, because keeping quiet contributes to passiveness. And when you are a passive as a citizen, then it means you have lost your own power as an individual. One of the things DDP we are excited about is that individual power that we've been given by the Constitution, which is our primary document that gives us the mandate. Now, nobody can take that away from you because it's protected by laws. It's protected by a Bill of Human Rights, which we're going to talk to about later this afternoon and later into our show. And those are parameters that are being given by our government so that your voice and my voice and everybody's voice has a protection. But it also been created a platform where it can be heard. And therefore, how do we cure this hopelessness is to look for the opportunities where my voice can be heard. Now, that also leads to the other question. What if the opportunities that are available are not citizen-friendly? Because we cannot shy away from that view right now, and somebody could be sitting with that question and say, hey, I know those opportunities do exist. I have tried that before, but it doesn't work. And those that I know that could have been working are not working. So what do I do as a citizen? Let me answer my own questions. Look for them and invent them. Because there are those spaces that have been legislated and they are there. And we know across our country, there has been enormous challenge in terms of allowing ordinary citizens to participate in those legislated spaces. But there are also now innovative spaces that citizens are creating for themselves, which is still very okay, because they have to find a way to advocate for better life and better public services provision without necessarily feeling that they're entangled in a system of governance that do not give them a chance to voice what they think is important.
Sure, I'm so glad that you actually touched on the next part that we're going to be discussing on. There was a study that was conducted by Afrobarometer back in 2018 already, pre-COVID times. And at that time, they're already talking about the established mechanisms of representation, like your regular elections, your political parties being somewhat of a tool for the people, representation, the parliaments are very much necessary. There's no one saying that they should be completely abolished, unless you are now advocating against democracy completely. They're all necessary, yet it still feels like they're not sufficient, right? And I think I'm coming at this from the angle of even though there might be these legislative procedures and the wards, etc., I think I just want to ask you, Dr. K, what is the role of education in aiding people to be aware of these different mechanisms, right? Because I do think that a lot of the times the frustration does come from people not being educated about it. Like I can't even tell you, back from my days when I was doing life orientation at school, democracy was plainly spoken at a general level, you know, that, okay, the first time South Africa had its democratic elections was on the 27th of February. And ever since then, it's been kumbaya, right? And maybe the one other thing that you could have seen is the TRC, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was one of the forms, I guess, of that participation of citizens. But there wasn't concrete education until I came across my politics degree on what exactly it looks like to be an active citizen in South Africa. So I think maybe I just want to ask you that question on our education system. What do you think it's its role in this citizen participation thing for our democracy?
I think you're hitting on a very, very powerful point right there, because part of the work that DDP does is community education. And we use different materials to enhance public's knowledge on the various aspects that contribute to a strong and a thriving democratic society. So we cannot discount the aspect of education as far as consolidating democracy is concerned, because it's that knowledge that when we have it, we facilitate the lived values of democracy that do promote or give rise to new norms, that promote equality in society, that promote equity in society, that promote power sharing, that promote active citizens, that of course leads to social justice. So my take on this will be that until we get to a place where we have saturated our society with the correct knowledge, because again, we're living in the days of misinformation. So it's very important that citizens also know where to get proper information and correct factual information to inform themselves. And at the same time, organizations like DDP and others throughout this country to continue doubling their efforts in reaching out to as many people as possible, so that even those that are excluded from the forms of democratic processes that we are talking about can be reached with information. When an informed citizenry is provided with the right information, it's a very powerful citizenry, because it's able to engage in any aspects with confidence, and they're able to really execute their civic responsibilities without doubt. And that's what we aim to do daily at DDP.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic, Dr. K. I think just still on the education side of things and citizen literacy, let's say, towards the political systems that we do have. I think one of the more common ones that people understand to be the best way of engaging is through voting. Right. That's almost kind of like what's inherent to democracy. You cannot have a democracy if there's no votes. And I just want to ask you, this particular one is, given the context that we had of our recent local government elections, one of the lowest voter turnouts in the history of our young little democracy, do you think that people not voting is a means of citizen engagement? Is this an era and a time for us to challenge these traditional facets of citizen participation in democracy, such as voting?
Well, this is a very important question, but also that needs a day or two to really unpack and engage and debate. So I'm going to try my best in the limited time that I have. I would say upfront that abstaining from voting is not citizen engagement. Now, given the background I've given about why it's important that every citizen's voice must be heard, one way the voice of the citizens is heard is through their ballot. And if you cannot be able to participate in an election, what you're actually saying as a citizen indirectly, I'm handing over my power, my constitutionally given power, to somebody else, to either political party or to other people in society, to make decisions on my behalf that I may not necessarily agree with. So we advocate as DDP irrespective of what you feel about a political party or the political situation in the country, come an election time, get out there and vote. There must be someone somewhere along that long list of political parties that represents something that comes close to your aspirations as an individual citizen. Go and do it. You cannot participate and engage faithfully as a citizen by abdicating your responsibilities. So I'm one of those defenders of public participation through the ballot box as one of the powerful mechanisms to express our aspirations, and at the same time, of course, ensure that our society is governed properly. And therefore, we want to be part of the solution by participating in voting.
It's always a controversial topic, that one, to vote or not to vote. It's almost like to be or not to be. And I think just we're still in Human Rights Month. We're heading to the last stretch of it right now. And interestingly, like for South Africa, Human Rights Month is also at the same time as International Women's Month, although we have our own dedicated month for women in August. I think I just want to ask you, what is the relationship between democracy and human rights? That can maybe be our question of closing off for today.
I think we should write a thesis about that, because that's a very big question, but I'm going to try my best. Okay, so coming just broadly by understanding what democracy is about, is a system of governance that allows everyone to participate in deciding what needs to be, how they want to be governed, and giving those people they think they should represent them the power to execute certain decisions on their behalf in a system that allows them to participate effectively. Now, human rights, on the other hand, are one of the mechanisms that a democratic society creates for them to participate effectively in that society, bearing in mind that there are boundaries to be observed and what are the responsibilities of everyone who is participating in that form of governance. In this case, is a democratic governance. Yeah. Therefore, the two are not mutually exclusive. You cannot have one and don't have the other. If you really want to have democracy, a human rights mechanism must be in there so that each of us knows where our boundaries are. Our government needs to know where it does as executive. Our judiciary needs to know where it stops. Our legislature knows where it stops. Citizens know where they intersect with all these aspects and know who does what. Now, in terms of human rights, here we are protecting the ability of individual citizens or groups of citizens insofar as participating in that whole ecosystem of democratic governance is concerned. We are protecting freedoms and rights of participation and rights of expression and the rights of belonging and all those rights that are enshrined in our Constitution and highlighted in the Bill of Rights. You cannot have those and then say you have a democratic society. We have seen our world right now is littered with examples where when those freedoms are limited, then it's not democracy any longer. It's another form of governance. In South Africa, our beloved country has this powerful mechanism that allows us to participate in these processes. And the challenge right now, the dilemma that we are experiencing right now, is that while on paper we started very well in 1994 and have this beautiful constitution, what has happened now, we have those who are included, a majority that feel excluded, especially because our society is changing rapidly. Now we have, for example, influx of African migrants and international migrants also. And now they're in the same space with ordinary South Africans, and there's now competition for resources. And now the human rights conversation becomes even more prominent because our Constitution allows everyone who is in the country to enjoy their rights and their freedoms and are protected by the Constitution. I think the dilemma now is to constantly address the challenges of ensuring that we do not create a system that there's majority of us excluded from democratic processes that will threaten the very essence of why we exist as a society.
Sure, so powerful. I'm so glad you actually even brought up immigrant and migrant issues that are occurring in South Africa. As many of you would be aware, DDP also has got a migration project in which we deal directly with these issues. So you can catch that as well on our social media platforms and check out the YouTube pages for that, where all of these things are continuously challenged. Dr. K, we could discuss for even longer, but this is where I think we have to end our podcast. Thank you very much to our listener for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Be on the lookout for April, where we will have episode 2 of our podcast, All Things Freedom, in celebration of our Freedom Month and in celebration of South Africa having 29 years of democracy. Please do follow us on our social media pages at DDP_democracy. And I mean all social media pages, your Facebook, your YouTube, your TikTok, your Twitter, your Instagram, we are on it. And thank you very much for tuning into DDP Podcasts, where we educate, activate, and mobilize.